Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Stunder with the Budget and Finance Committee, and I'm also an elder at the Boyd's Presbyterian Church located way out there in Northwest Montgomery County. And this is the Fiscal 21 Presbytery Budget presentation. We're going to do three things today. First, we're going to learn what the Budget and Finance Committee does. Then we're going to review the Fiscal 21 operating budget. Then we're going to review the Fiscal 21 mission budget. Now, I think some of you may know that I'm a meteorologist. So as in years past, I'm going to present the budgets using a weather and water flow type of metaphor. And hopefully this will make the budgets understandable to you. First of all, what are the roles of the Budget and Finance Committee? We have three basic roles. First, we monitor the current budgets and we advise on the current budgets. We're kind of like a radar screen that's tracking the budgets and the financial picture of the Presbytery year round. Secondly, we prepare and present the upcoming fiscal year budgets. We look at the who, what, where, when, why, and how of the fiscal year budgets that are being proposed, both on the operating side and on the mission side. And the third thing we do is we deal with long-term budget planning for the Presbytery. So the Budget and Finance Committee reporting is fairly simple. We report to council. And so we interact also with Presbytery mission committees and Presbytery operating committees. And of course, council sends any budget-related actions to the floor of Presbytery for action by you. We also provide financial reports for each Presbytery meeting, but it's important for everyone to note that we don't debate the value or the need of any of the proposed programs. That's the council's role, and that's also your role as a commissioner. We have all sorts of data. There's monthly data, there's quarterly data, there's 10-year trend data, all different types of data that we use. We also have forecasting knowledge. This is based on the committee requests, based on needed funds and availability, and based on patterns of the past. We also have planning knowledge, so we're ready to plan for the future. But just like meteorology, economics is not an exact science. Let's take a look now at the operating budget. What is the operating budget? And I found this from the Genesee Valley Presbytery. I've used it for years. It's probably one of the best ways to describe an operating budget. It's just like a train requires power to move, the governing bodies require a power source to provide services as the body of Christ. So within our Presbytery, the operating budget encompasses most of the Presbytery staffing and associated space, the office, COM and all of its various teams, the Committee on Preparation for Ministry, including the scholarships, and a bunch of other committees such as stewardship and communication. Those are what encompass the operating budget. So now let's take a look at this metaphor, the water management metaphor. It's an easy concept to understand. Just remember there's rain, there's reservoirs, and then there's streams. So here we have the rain. The rain is basically, in our metaphor, the inflow or the church per capita giving into the system. So that's the rain. And the rain is also a variable. Reservoir would be considered a fund that we have available. And the outflow is a funding stream to a Presbytery program. So some of the outflows related to the operating budget would be COM, staff salaries, the Committee on Preparation for Ministry, CPM, and all the other committees that are related to the operating type budget. Those would be considered an outflow to the operating budget or funding stream. So now there are several ways the operating budget is funded. And as I just said, the two main waves via per capita, which is the rain, and this is a variable every year. This is your giving to per capita, and also via reservoir. The big reservoir is the office fund, and I'll show you that in a second. But we also have three other special ways. We have a brand new pond. It's a small pond. It's what we call the operating reserves. It's a small amount, but nonetheless, it's new and it's available to us. There's also a pond for the Pastor's Retreat Fund. And for those of you that are not familiar, this is a special fund that's been set aside for the Pastor's Retreat, which occurs every year, usually around the end of January, beginning of February, down in Ocean City. And if you want more details, please contact the Presbytery office. It's a very good event for pastors and their spouses. There's also a special reservoir for the Committee on Preparation for Ministry for scholarships only. So again, two main ways, the rain via per capita, via big reservoir, the office fund, and then via these three special ways. So now if we zoom in on the operating budget, let's take a look at incomes, funds, and expenses. I'll talk a little bit more about per capita, about the rain here in a second. But the operating budget funds, the reservoirs, their current levels are the office fund has $978,000, And this fund's now been replenished by the Wilson Lane property sale, so that's good. The operating reserve fund has about $58,500. The scholarship fund has $935,000, and the parish retreat fund has $48,000. When we look at expenses for fiscal 21, the fiscal 21 budget is actually about the same as fiscal 20. There have been very minor increases in rent and salaries. So when we compare the fiscal 20 budget with the fiscal 21 budget, there's a small deficit of about $8,661 in fiscal 21 versus fiscal 20. So now let's zoom in on per capita itself. So what is per capita? Well, first of all, we need to understand membership. The key number for membership is 26,855. That's how many members we have in National Capital Presbytery. And this number is about 2 years old because of the way we statistically count things. It's not right up to the minute. It's the way we have to do it at the end of the years. But each governing body sets a per capita amount to cover its expense. And so National Capital Presbytery sets an amount to cover our expense. The Synod sets an amount to cover its expense. General Assembly sets an amount to cover its expense. And then there's arithmetic. So that set amount, whatever it is multiplied by our membership, 26,855. And that's per governing body. So the NCP set amount, the Synod, and the General Assembly, we sum it together and we get one per capita amount. So when we're actually looking at funding the budget, there are three ways. We're going to fund it per normal, meaning we're going to draw about $175,000 from the office fund, and that's the only large reservoir available. So let's do some of the math. This is going to leave about $628K left in the office fund at the end of fiscal 21. So we've basically taken the $978K that we have now, minus $175K for this year for fiscal 20, minus $175K for next year, fiscal 21, and that yields $628K. Now it's important for everyone to note that with an annual draw of $175K, we're only going to have until around fiscal 25, give or take, until the office fund runs out. So that's an important thing to note for the future, because this office fund is subsidizing part of our per capita. The next thing we're going to do for fiscal 21 is draw $8,661. That was that small deficit that we noted earlier from the operating reserves. And this is going to leave about $49,800 at the end of fiscal 21, assuming there are no other fiscal 20 draws, and we're pretty confident that there won't be any additional fiscal 20 draws. And then we're going to raise per capita only 3 cents. That's one of the lowest raises we've ever had. Here's how the math all works out. So the 2021 per capita rate for General Assembly is $8.98. That's an increase of 3 cents. That's where the increase is, actually. The Synod is $1.15, no increase. And the National Capital Presbytery per capita rate is $32.54, no increase from 2020. When you do the math, that's $42.67. And by the way, you take $42.67 times the membership number that I showed you earlier, 26,855, and that gives you the grand total of the budget for this year. So that's how all the math works. What I'd like you to do is review the operating budget details. You receive these details either in a packet or online. So take a few minutes to just take a look at the operating budget details, and you'll see some of the math that I just described to you. And also, please come with any questions to the open space prior to the September Presbytery meeting, or just simply mail them into the Presbytery office and we'll try to get back to you. The motion that you'll see on the floor of Presbytery will read something like this. You'll see what the proposed operating budget amount is, and that includes an increase in the per capita from $42.64 to $42.67, a 3-cent increase, and the $32.54 of the $42.67 stays here at National Capital Presbytery. So now let's move over to the mission budget. And we take a look at the mission budget. We're going to use the same water management metaphor here with the rain, the reservoirs, and the streams. This time, the rain is really the unified giving that all the churches provide to the presbytery, the unified giving. We also have various reservoirs on this side, on the mission side, and then we have an outflow on the mission side. And these are what are considered funding streams that go to a presbytery program. And so, for example, coming through the outflow, coming through a funding stream is church transformation underneath CDC, intercultural ministries with CDC, and new church development with CDC. And then coming through Mission Coordination Committee, MCC, there's a whole host of mission efforts that are ongoing, including global efforts, national efforts, local efforts, as well as campus ministry throughout the metro area. So you can imagine the inflow coming in, the unified giving, being supplemented by a reservoir, and then flowing out to all the different programs that we have for CDC, MCC, and other programs that are funded by the mission budget. So as I mentioned, the mission budget is funded in several ways. It's funded via unified giving from the churches, and that's considered the rain. This is a key driver. Sometimes it rains a lot, sometimes it doesn't. And then we have several reservoirs. For example, we do have the Resurrection Fund reservoir that is available, and we have a new growth fund. And for those of you that may not know this, the new growth fund is an early 2020, actually a January 2020, vote on the floor of Presbytery to combine the new church development and the Neelsville disaffiliation funds together to form the new growth fund. The mission budget's a challenge. So when you take a look at things in terms of budget requests for 2021, they're generally similar to 2020. The Budget and Finance Committee has been able to honor all requests. All requests have been incorporated into the budget. There's been an additional $100,000 requested by the CDC for new projects. That's not an issue. That can be funded from the reservoir, from the fund called the New Growth Fund. That New Growth Fund is currently at $1.8 million. In terms of the funds themselves, we anticipate normal draws from the various reservoirs, such as a normal draw from the Resurrection Fund, from the New Growth Fund, and so forth. However, we do have some concern here. And in order to understand the concern, we need to understand that there's uncertainty all around us. I can certainly say as a meteorologist, there's uncertainty in terms of weather. And I guess being an economist for the Presbytery, I'll say there's uncertainty in economic forecasting also. We do have a concern in this area. We can't effectively forecast unified giving for fiscal 21. So that's been a problem for us. We were trying to determine how we can try to forecast unified giving. Normally, we're able to forecast unified giving fairly well, but this year our committee could not effectively forecast unified giving, and I'm going to show you why we can't effectively do that. First of all, we need to understand the 10-year trend for unified giving. What you're seeing here along the y-axis is dollars, and along the x-axis, you're seeing the years. So what this graph is telling you is that in 2010, we had almost 615,000 in unified giving, and we've gone down to about 478,000 or so at the end of fiscal 19. So that's a fairly decent drop. We have had a little bit of a recovery here, but nonetheless, the slope is pretty much downward over the past 10 years or so. But let's take a look at this graph, and this is why we see uncertainty in terms of trying to forecast for unified giving. What this graph is showing is 2019 versus 2020 monthly unified giving. So what you're seeing again are dollars along here and the months along here. So what you see in kind of an orange color, and I've circled some of the highlighted points here, are results so far for fiscal 20. And what you're seeing are the results for fiscal 19, for 2019. So as you can see here, we started the year relatively low. That's typical for January. We were going up. We did okay in March, then bang, we took a major hit here going through May. We did spike up again, and we took another major hit in July. You can see what happened with the blue in fiscal 19, a little bit of a hit here and there. And of course, this is summertime here, but then a major spike up at the end. So basically, we see that there's some uncertainty factors here. We see a really steep decline here, and also choppiness going on in 2021. And we're not sure how to forecast this going into 2021. We cannot clearly determine the future unified giving due to the pandemic. At this point in time, we don't know what the future will hold here in terms of unified giving. But I would say on the positive side, the future impact of stewardship and other outreach efforts should help in terms of dealing with unified giving. We have an awful lot of very good programs within the Presbytery that are coming forward. And hopefully there'll be an impact of stewardship and outreach efforts to continue to fund those types of programs. But this is what we're dealing with for going forward for fiscal 21. The uncertainty, the steep decline, and the choppiness. Will it continue or not? And so as a result, what we're doing is we're sticking with the same unified giving projection for fiscal 21. And therefore, we're going with a flat fiscal 21 budget. So I would encourage you, much like the operating budget, I would encourage you to review the mission budget details. You can find those in the packet prior to the meeting or online. And I would also come with any questions to the open space prior to the September Presbytery meeting, or email them to the Presbytery office. And what you'll see on the floor Presbytery is a motion something like this to set the proposed 2020 mission budget to that number. In terms of a summary, we're looking at a flat 2021 operating budget with a 3-cent increase in per capita. We're looking at a flat 2021 mission budget, and we're going to assume the same unified giving level as fiscal 20. And friends, this concludes my fiscal 21 budget presentation to you. God bless, and I'll see you around Presbytery.